Hello learners, you're welcome to Education Online. I'm Danny Susan, your teacher of math. Today we're going to continue with factorization like we had it last time, and we said factorization is the process of breaking up expressions into separate factors. And with me we're going to have a continuation example on examples of difference between two squares. So we're going to have some examples to help us understand more of difference between two squares. We say difference between two squares is simply an identity which gives us the product of the sum and the difference between two numbers. So we're going to have our first example, which says without using tables or calculator, tables or calculators, evaluate. Now first number here is going to be 7.46 squared minus 2.54 squared. Said when given a number like this, we are using the difference between two squares, whereby we're going to find a product of the sum and the difference of two numbers. So when we have a number like this, both of them are squared, we're going to have two brackets which we are going to multiply to give us the final answer. The first bracket will be adding the two numbers, and the second bracket will be subtracting the same numbers. Then after, we shall multiply the result. So we've already got our two brackets. We said in the first case, we are supposed to add the first one. We add 7.46 to 2.54. Then the second bracket will be having the subtraction. So after subtracting the two numbers, we shall have 7.46 minus, plus 2. To give us 10 as our first bracket. And the second bracket, after subtracting, we shall have 4.92. So we're going to open the two brackets. This bracket will multiply this, and after multiplying, we shall be having 49.2 as our final answer. Let's go to the next example. We shall have 5.2 times open bracket 3.75 squared minus 1.25 squared. The number we are having outside does not have a square, but the two numbers inside both have square. So implying it's the two numbers we are having inside that we shall apply difference of two squares, where we shall add the two numbers and also subtract the two numbers, and we multiply the result of the two brackets. Then after, we shall use this one later on. When, for example, we use body mass, whereby we start always with the bracket, this is simply what we are going to even use here. We are having the bracket, so we first deal with what is in the bracket before we multiply what is outside. But we are going to maintain this without altering. So we shall have 5.2 times, in our bracket we shall have 3.75 plus 1.2, and the other bracket will have, we shall have 3.75 minus 1.25. So we maintain our 5.2 into, we are going to add 3.75 and 1.25 to give us, here we shall have 5 in this first bracket. Then the second one, after subtracting 3.75 minus 1.25, we shall be having 2.50. So we are now going to open the two brackets to get the final answer before we multiply with what is outside. So when we have this, we are having, we've now opened the bracket, we are having this, we're now multiplying all of them, but we've made the 5, which is a whole number, to also be a fraction by writing it out of 1. So when you have this, we're going to now finally have here, this will be 52 times 125. When you multiply the denominators, you'll get here 100. So if we choose this outside and work out with this, we shall be having 52 times 125 over 100 is the same as 1.25, and our final answer will be 65. So when given a number like this, always do not get confused, but first sort out what is in the bracket before you open the bracket and finally deal with what has been given. Like we maintain the 5.2 until we finalize and simplify the bracket. Then at the end of it, we open the bracket and we're able to get our answer. Where I just simply took this 52, the denominator is the same, but we put 125 over 100 to give us 1.25. Then after you multiply and you get your final answer as 65. So that is it with our example for examples for difference of two squares. Now we are going to factorize quadratic expressions. We said for quadratic expressions, we simply have an equation whereby it is written in this form as ax squared plus bx plus c. This is a quadratic expression we shall be using in this case. And when we have this, what we mean here, a, b, and c are constants. And we are having this x squared, b squared, and c squared. And when given an expression like this, we need to consider, first of all, A, B, and C being constants, and B and C play a key role, whereby we are going to have the product and we are also going to have the sum. In this case, before solving the expression, you need to know those two, and they are important because they help us to solve the number. And in that process of having the sum and the product, in this case, our B will be the value of the sum, and to get the value of the product, we need to multiply A and C to give us the product, whereby after getting the product and the sum, you need to get a common factor, the two numbers, whereby when you add, it will give you the same product you get, and the same, I mean when you multiply, it will give you the same product. And when you add, you're supposed to get the sum. The two numbers you choose have to play the two parts. So we're going to have here, in this case, we shall have our AC being the product. Then our B will be the sum. Let's have some examples to understand more of this. just like I said before, for case of quadratic expressions, this is how the number is written. We shall have ax squared plus bx plus c, just like the way I've written it here. And in this case, we are saying a, b, and c are constants. After knowing that a, b, c are constant, we need to also know certain things that will help us to solve the expression easily. We said for this case, we needed to know the sum and the product. And we said, when given x without a coefficient, if the coefficient is 1, then you can multiply simply 1 by c to give you the final product. But if the coefficient of x is more than 1, it can be 2, it could be 3, any other number, you multiply it by c to give you the final product. So in this case, our product will be AC. And for case of the sum, our sum in this case is going to be letter B. Implying whenever you're given an expression, you need to know what are the products. For you to know the product, you need to first know the coefficient of x. If x has a coefficient more than 1, then you need to multiply it by c to give you the correct product. But if x has a coefficient which is 1, any number multiplied by 1 is that number. So we simply take it the way it is, and this will be our sum. After knowing the two, which is the product and which is the sum, we go ahead to choose two different numbers, which will help us. The same two numbers, when you multiply, should give you the product you've got, and when you add the same numbers, you're supposed to get the sum that you've got out of the expression being given. So let's have some examples. Okay, when given, we have these two examples we are going to work out. So we're going to start with example 1. We're having our a as x squared minus 3x plus 2. When given a number like this, we need to now identify which is the product and which is the sum. In this case, we are having our coefficient of x, which is the value of a, as 1. And our value of b in this case is negative 3, and then the value of c is 2. When taking out the sum and the product, we need to be keen on the signs being given. If the expression has got a negative value of b, then when you are writing the sum, it should contain that sign of negative. It's the same thing that applies to getting the product. If the coefficient of x in the first case is having a negative, then multiply it correctly with the value of c to give you the right product. So in this case, we are having x squared minus 3x plus 2. Since the coefficient of x is 1, it means to get our product of c, we're simply going to say 1 times 2 to give us 2. Our value of a is 1. That's why it's not written here. Any number multiplied by 1 is that number. So 1 times 2 will give us 2, and our sum is going to be negative 3. So we shall have it here, negative 3. Then after, we need to get two numbers. We need to get two numbers, just like as I said before, that these two numbers, when you multiply them, should give you the value of 2, and when you add them, it should give you negative 3. So in this case, we are going to have negative 1 and negative 2. A negative times a negative will give you positive 3, and when you add negative plus a negative 2 will give you negative 3. After having this, we are going to use these two numbers and put it in our expression in the part where we have sum. So that when we add them, it should give us the same value as this. Then we shall work it further. So now we are going to have x squared minus our x, 1x. Even if you don't write the 1, it doesn't make any difference. So we simply write it as x, then minus our 2x plus 2. When you add negative x minus x, you will still end up getting your negative 3 as the original question. So we've not altered the question much. After here, we're going to have, since we are now having 4 different, we're going to group them. After grouping them, we shall factor out what is common in any of the 2 groups. Like for example, the first one, you can see that the 2 numbers x is common to them. So we are going to factor out x. Then after, we shall have x squared divided by x to give us x. And x divided by x will give us 1. So it's minus 1, because this is negative x divided by x. After getting this first bracket being x minus 1, you should also make it a point that the next bracket should be the same with the first one for you to know that you are on the right track. So in this case, we are having 2 and 2 that is common to both, implying we have to factor out 2. But for us to factor out 2, we need to consider the signs. Which one will help us to get x minus 1 in the next bracket? So in this case, we need to factor out negative 2, so that this negative sign can affect this positive to give us a negative in the bracket. So we're going to have negative 2x divided by 2. The negatives will cancel and we shall be left with x. Then positive 2 divided by a negative will give us negative 1. Consider the 2 brackets are the same. So our first factor will be the values outside, which is going to be x minus 2. And the second one is going to be x minus 1. And these are going to be our 2 factors as requested. Just as like we said, for factorization is simply breaking up expressions into 2 separate factors. And in this case, we've got our 2 factors for this given expression as x squared minus 3x plus 2. Their 2 factors are x minus 2 and x minus 1. Let's do the second number, which is part B. It says x squared minus 5x plus, it's minus 6. If we have this, it's the same procedure we're going to continue with. First is to get the product and the sum. Then after, we shall get the 2 numbers that will help us to get the product and the sum. So in this case, our product is going to be, since our coefficient of x is 1, 1 times negative 6 will give us negative 6. And our sum in this case is going to be negative 5. So we need to find 2 numbers. We need to get 2 numbers that when you multiply will give you negative 6, and when you sum it up, it should give you negative 5. So we're now going to have negative 6 and 1. When you multiply negative 6 times 1, you'll get negative, and when you add negative 6 plus 1, it will give you negative 5. We're now going to use our 2 numbers we've got in the expression. We are going to put it where we have seen the sum, which is negative 5x. So we're now going to have our, the 1 is a positive because it's a positive 1. So we're going to have positive x minus 6x minus 6. We've not altered the question because when you add this 2x minus 6s, you'll still be left with negative 5x. So after this, we regroup the numbers being given and we factor out what is common in the numbers. So in this first case, we can see that x is common to both, so we bring out x. Then we have x squared divided by x to give us x. Then x divided by x will give us 1. In the next case, we are having negative 6 common to both. And before we consider, we know what is common there, but we need to be keen on the signs. We are having both of them as negatives, and our first bracket is having a positive, implying when we are choosing the common factor here, we should also consider the factor carefully so that we can get our second bracket being the same with the first one. So in this case, we are going to factor out negative 6. Negative 6x divided by negative 6 will give us positive x. Then negative 6 divided by negative 6, we shall get positive 1. You can see that the both brackets are the same. So our first factor in this case will be what is x minus 6 being our first factor, and the second one we simply choose 1 from the brackets. And that will be our final answer. That will be the factor we shall get after expressing x squared minus 5x minus 6. Remember we said we are factorizing quadratic expressions. Let's have the next example whereby we shall be now having coefficients of x. So be example 2. In our first example, we're having 2x squared plus x minus 6. In the first examples, we've been having coefficients or the values of a being 1. In this case, we are having the value of a as being 2, which is greater than 1. Let's see how we're going to do it. It's more or less the same way, but we just have to consider certain few factors. So in this case, we are saying our value of a is no longer 1, it's more than 1, and it's 2. So for us to get our product in this case, we are going to multiply this coefficient by 6 to give us our new product being negative 12. So here we're going to have our product as negative 12. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And our sum in this case is positive 1. So what are these two numbers that when you multiply should give you negative 12, and when you add it should give you positive 1? So here we're going to have 4 and 3. When you multiply, this 3 should be negative because our product is having a negative value. So when you multiply 4 times negative 3, you'll be in position to get negative 12. And when you add 4 plus negative 3, you'll be in position to get our sum, which is 1. So here we're now going to have our expression as. And another thing we need to consider whenever having a number which is having coefficient more than 1, when finding, after getting the product and the sum, what you need to do is you maintain the quotient the way it is. You should not alter. Don't remove the 2, neither should you include the 12 in the equation. We maintain it the way it is. So here we're now going to have 2x squared plus 4 minus 3x. Sorry, this is x here. Then minus our 6. When you do your 4x minus 3, you will still be in position to get x, which is our sum as 1. So here we're going to regroup the two numbers. After regrouping the expression like this, we find what is common in each group and then we factor it out. So in this case, when you look at 2x squared and 4x, 2x is common to both. So we pull out 2x. 2x squared divided by 2x, we shall be left with x. Then 4x divided by 2x, you'll be left with plus 2. So in this second case, we are having negative 3x and negative 6. Remember to consider the first bracket you've got. Even the second bracket must be the same as the first one. So in this case, we need to be careful with the sign we are going to choose on the number which is common to both. So in this case, 3 is common to both negative 3x and negative 6x. But since both of them are negatives and we require our second bracket to have a value just like the first one, we're going to factor out negative 3. So we shall have negative 3x divided by negative 3 to give us positive x. Then negative 6 divided by negative 3 to give us positive 2. After seeing that the two brackets are the same, then we are progressing well. Then our first factor in this case is going to be 2x minus 3. And the second factor is going to be x plus 2 as required after factorization. Whenever we factorize, we said we are breaking up expressions into separate factors, and after breaking up our 2x squared plus 6, plus x minus 6, these are the two factors we shall end up with. Let's have the next example. That's example B. We are saying it's negative 2t squared plus t plus 6. The same way here, our value of a is more than 1, but this time we are having a negative value. And I said earlier on that you work the number the way it has been given. We are having a negative sign here, implying when we are multiplying, we should consider it. So for this case, our product is going to be, you can choose to do it like this. It's also another way of working it out. So negative 2 times 6 to give us negative 12. And our sum is going to be 1. So what are the two numbers that when you multiply should give you negative 12, and when you add it should give you 1? We're going to have 4 and negative 3. 4 times negative 3 will give you negative 12, and 4 plus negative 3 will give you 1. So after knowing the numbers, we're going to use it to put into our expression. But as I said earlier on, even after finding the product and the sum, we do not alternate our question. The questions remain the same. We're only using this information to help us solve the expression. So we're now going to have our negative 2t squared plus 4t. This value, the two numbers we are having that are trying to express it in the form of the sum. So we shall have minus 3t plus 6. You may wonder, why am I using these numbers? They were just numbers here, but here I'm now putting the t. Remember, these numbers are helping us to solve this expression. So when I put it without the t, it will change the meaning of the question. But when I put it like this, it brings the question out clearly. For example, 4t minus 3t, you'll be left with t. We're not having 1 in the question, but we are having t. So after here, we're going to regroup. After regrouping, you find out what is common to both of them. So in this case, when you look at negative 2t squared plus 4t, you can see that 2t is common to both of them. So we are going to bring out 2t. But the t, we are having negative at the start here. So I'm going to bring out negative 2t. If I bring out negative 2t, we are going to divide negative 2t squared, divide by negative 2t, you'll be left with t. Then 4t divided by 2t, you'll be left with 2. But remember, the 2t is a negative, so you will have minus 2. We go to the next one. We are having 3t plus 6. What is common there? It is 3. 3 can go both in 3 and can also go in 6. So we are going to factor out that 3. But remember, our first bracket is having t minus 2. Implying the number we are going to factor out, we should consider its sign seriously so that we can get the same bracket as this one. So here we're going to bring negative 3. We shall have negative 3t divided by negative 3 to give us t. Then 6 divided by negative 3 will give us negative. You can see that our two brackets are the same. So we're going to get our first factor from what is outside, which is going to be negative 2t minus 3. And our next factor is going to be t minus 2 as required. So after working out, after factorizing our expression, which is negative 2t squared plus t plus 6, you work it out until you end up with the two required factors. Don't forget, we are factorizing expressions. Let's go to example 3. When given a number like this one, this is slightly different, but it's the same thing. We are having two different brackets already being given here. We are having, this is y. We are having x plus 2y squared minus 4 into x plus 2y plus 3. When given an expression like this one, it looks slightly different, but it's almost the same. The two brackets are the same. So what we're going to do is we are going to let a certain letter replace what is in the bracket. Then we get a simple expression to factorize. So we are saying let x plus 2y is equal to m. X plus 2y is equal to m. So where we see x plus 2y, we're going to replace it with m. So meaning our new expression is going to be m squared minus 4m plus 3. I think this is more or less what we did before, but they simply just alternated the question to make you feel it's a bit different, but it's the same thing. All you need to do is to understand it before you start working it out. Now after having this, I believe it's now simple for all of us to work it out. So now with this, we find our product. Our product in this case will be positive 3, and the sum will be negative 4. And what are those two numbers that when we multiply should give us 3, and when we add should give us negative 4? We're going to have negative 1 and negative 3. Negative 1 and negative 3. The reason why I'm choosing the two numbers all having negatives, because a negative times a negative will give you a positive. And remember, the same numbers we should add and should give us a negative value. That's why when we multiply the two negatives, we shall get positive 3. And when we add the two, we shall be in position to get negative 4. So we are now going to have it as our m squared minus m minus 3m plus 3. Hope you are moving on together. I've simply used the two numbers which you've got and put it in our expression as part of the sum. When you add these two, you will still be in position to get negative 4m. So here we're going to regroup them and factor out what is common. M squared and m is common. So m squared divided by m will give us m. Then negative m divided by m will give us negative 1. In this second case, we are having 3 being common to both. So we are going to factor out 3. But before we factor out 3, we need to consider the sign so that we can get the same bracket. So here we shall have negative 3. So negative 3m divided by negative 3 will give us m. And 3 divided by negative 3 will give us negative 1. The two brackets are the same, so we shall have now m minus 3 as being the first factor, and the second factor will be m minus 1. But this shouldn't be the end of our answer. Remember, our question did not start with m, but we used the m to help us solve the number easily. So we are going to go back to the question and put m where it belongs. So we are saying, but our m is x plus 2y. So we're now going to have our two brackets. Since the value of m is this, we shall have x plus 2y minus 3 as our first bracket. Then the second bracket, we shall have our value of m, which is x plus 2y minus 1. So this will be the two factors we shall get after factorizing the number which was being given. As I said earlier on, whenever given a question, do not get confused, but first understand it, interpret it well, then you start working it out. If you get it like the way we've just got it with two different brackets, but they're the same, you simply let it to be a certain letter. Then you can find it easy as we've got it here, and you factorize it easily. In case of a value of a being more than 1, you multiply it to get the value, and let that product help you to solve the given expression minus you altering the question. Thank you for today. I remain your math teacher, Madam Dan Susan. Keep it education online.